Ladies and gentlemen, there's a dangerous misconception in our world today that being constantly available is the same as being valuable. But let me tell you something. Availability without value is noise. It is possible to be everywhere and still be going nowhere. We are living in a time where people are obsessed with visibility. Social media, notifications, responses, being online, being seen, being heard. But hear this, being seen does not mean you are significant. Accessibility does not equal worth. You are not designed to be common. You are born with something so rare that your presence should be a privilege, not a routine. Diamonds are not found on the surface. Oil is not discovered in shallow ground. The more valuable a thing is, the harder it is to access. You see, the problem is not that people don't notice you. The problem is that you've made yourself too easy to reach. And anything too easy to reach becomes too easy to take for granted. You were not born to be convenient. You were born to be impactful. Every product has a price, but purpose determines value. And when you don't understand your value, you lower your price. And when you lower your price, you'll attract those who are not willing to pay what you're truly worth. Visibility is not the same as value. You can be seen by the whole world and still be unseen in purpose. In fact, many people confuse popularity with significance. Just because the crowd is clapping doesn't mean you're fulfilling your calling. There's a subtle trap in constantly seeking to be noticed, a temptation to believe that visibility validates our existence. But the truth is, being seen by men does not always mean you are approved by God. Consider the fig tree in Mark chapter 11. From a distance, it looked fruitful, it had leaves, it had presence, it had visibility. But when Jesus approached it, there was nothing of substance, no fruit. It had the image without the essence. He cursed the tree, not because it wasn't seen, but because it wasn't valuable. It had the appearance of productivity, but no fulfillment of purpose. How many lives today are like that fig tree? Loud but empty, visible but fruitless, known by many but impactful to none. Ask yourself, are you visible or are you valuable? Are you producing something that transforms lives or just projecting something that gathers likes? If visibility was all that mattered, then gold wouldn't be hidden deep in the earth and pearls wouldn't be buried in the ocean. The more precious a thing is, the more protected it is. God hides value not because he wants it concealed, but because he wants it discovered by the right people, those willing to seek, to dig, to invest. Jesus was on the earth for 30 years before anyone even heard of him. 30 years of silence, preparation, and development, and when he finally appeared publicly, he changed the course of history in just 3.5 years. He wasn't rushing to be seen. He was preparing to be impactful. He understood that timing is everything and premature exposure can destroy potential. Some of us are asking God for platforms when he's trying to give us foundations. We want the stage before we've developed the substance. But elevation without preparation leads to collapse. Social media has tricked this generation into believing that constant posting is purpose. But God doesn't measure your worth by your followers. He measures it by your fruit. He says in John 15:8, this is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. Fruit, not fame. Substance, not selfies. Transformation, not attention. Look at Joseph. He had a dream at 17. But he didn't walk into it until he was 30. In between, he was hidden, betrayed, forgotten, imprisoned. But even in obscurity, his value was increasing. Why? Because visibility wasn't his goal, purpose was. And when Pharaoh called for him, Joseph didn't need to advertise himself. His gift made room for him. Proverbs 18:16 says, a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. Not his visibility, his value. Sometimes God will hide you not to punish you, but to preserve you. Because what's seen too early can be judged too soon. You don't need to chase attention when you carry something authentic. When your life carries true value, you won't need to announce yourself. Purpose will call your name. Rarity increases worth. What makes something valuable is not how often you see it, it's how difficult it is to find. Common things are easily replaced, but rare things are preserved, pursued, and protected. If everyone can get it anytime, it loses its value. And yet, many people make themselves so available that they become familiar, and familiarity breeds dishonor. Jesus himself faced this. In Mark 6, when he returned to his hometown, the people said, "Isn't this the carpenter, Mary's son?" And the Bible says he could do no mighty works there, not because he lost power, but because they lost honor. Why? Because they became too familiar. They saw him daily and lost sight of who he truly was. That's the danger of being overly accessible. People begin to treat you casually, even when you're carrying something sacred. The more valuable a resource, the less accessible it is. Think about it. Gold, diamonds, oil. These are not lying on the surface. You've got to dig, you have to search, study, and invest. Why? Because the demand is high, but the supply is low. That's what gives it value. Now, let me ask you, have you allowed yourself to become too easy to access? Are you giving out time, energy, and presence without measuring the cost? When you don't understand your rarity, you'll keep exposing yourself to people who haven't earned the right to access you. Even Jesus had boundaries. He spoke to crowds, walked with 12, mentored 3, and revealed himself deeply to 1. He knew how to manage access based on assignment. You don't give pearls to pigs, not because pigs are bad, but because they lack the capacity to value what you carry. That's what he meant in Matthew 7:6. Do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet. Your gift is too rare to be thrown around. Your calling is too uncommon to be placed in common spaces. Let's look at Esther. She didn't walk into the palace because she was available. She was chosen because she was exceptional. Her preparation separated her. Her discipline distinguished her. And when the time came, the king didn't pick someone he saw every day. He picked the one who had been prepared, refined, and revealed in due season. Rarity created desire. Scarcity created honor. When you are everywhere, you become normal. But when you carry something rare, people pursue you differently. In today's culture, we're told to be always on, always responsive, always engaged. But constant presence can produce predictable impact. If you're always seen, you might not be missed. And if you're never missed, your value is assumed. Have you noticed that? The sun is more appreciated after a storm. Or how silence becomes beautiful after noise. That's because contrast creates appreciation. You are not meant to be common. God did not design you to blend in. He called you a peculiar people, a royal priesthood, a chosen generation. You are not the product of a factory. You are the masterpiece of a king. And kings don't mass produce value. They craft it one at a time. So stop comparing yourself with people who are everywhere. You weren't made to be everywhere. You are made to be impactful where it matters. You are not rare because you say you are. You are rare because God placed something in you that cannot be duplicated. Availability without purpose leads to exploitation. When you don't know why you're here, you'll say yes to everything and everyone. You'll give your time, energy, and presence to people and situations that do not honor your value. And over time, they will begin to use you not because they're evil, but because you've made yourself easy to use. The danger is not always in people's intentions. It's in your inability to protect your purpose. God never created you to be busy. He created you to be effective. Busyness is not the same as productivity. You can be active and still be absent from your assignment. The enemy of purpose is not always sin. Sometimes it's distraction. The enemy doesn't have to destroy you if he can distract you. And one of the easiest ways to get distracted is by being too available to everything and everyone. Let's look at the story of Nehemiah. He was on a divine assignment, rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. While he was working, some men sent a message trying to get him to come down and meet with them. But I love his response. I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. He understood the value of his purpose. He refused to be pulled away just because someone demanded his attention. Can you say that? Or do you let every message, every invitation, every opportunity pull you in 100 directions? Purpose gives you boundaries. Without it, you become like a city with broken walls. Anything can enter and everything can leave. You say yes to people who only want access to your strength but have no interest in your well-being. You entertain conversations that drain you, projects that distract you, and relationships that derail you. But here's the truth. You can't fulfill purpose when you're constantly available to things that don't align with it. Think of a doctor in surgery. He doesn't answer his phone in the middle of operating on a patient. Why? Because the moment requires focus. The assignment demands clarity. What would happen if you treated your purpose like surgery? Sacred, focused, undisturbed. Instead, many of us treat our purpose like customer service. Available 24/7 to anyone who asks. But God didn't call you to be a hotline. He called you to be a vessel. And vessels are not for everyone. They are for specific use in the hands of the master. Even Jesus managed his availability. He often withdrew from the crowd to pray, to think, to rest. Why? Because he knew that constant exposure drains divine power. In Luke 5:16, it says, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." Not because he was tired of people, but because he had to stay connected to purpose. He wasn't moved by need, he was led by purpose. There were still people sick when he left towns. There were still crowds crying out. But he didn't stay simply because they wanted him. He moved based on the will of the Father. When you don't understand your purpose, people will pull you into theirs. And suddenly, you're living to fix everyone's problems, fulfill everyone's expectations, meet everyone's needs, while your own assignment lies abandoned. Purpose requires focus. Focus requires discipline. And discipline demands that you stop being available to everything that calls your name. You are not designed to be used. You are created to be deployed. Your presence should be a privilege, not a guarantee. When people begin to expect you rather than appreciate you, they start treating you as common. And the truth is, no one honors what they assume will always be available. Consistent access without accountability leads to careless treatment. You must teach the world how to value you by how you value yourself. Think of the Holy of Holies in the Old Testament. The presence of God did not dwell just anywhere. It was not common. It was behind the veil in a sacred place that only the high priest could enter, and only once a year. Why? Because when something is holy, it cannot be handled casually. Your time, your mind, your energy, your presence, these are not public property. They are sacred and they must be guarded. Even Jesus practiced this principle. He didn't go everywhere he was invited. He didn't say yes to every demand. He operated on divine timing, not public pressure. When Lazarus died, Jesus didn't rush to the scene, not because he didn't care, but because he understood that presence without purpose is performance. And he never performed for people's approval. He moved with kingdom precision. Do you? Some of us have allowed our presence to become too predictable. People know they can call you and you'll come. They know they can drain you and you'll still show up. But what has that availability cost you? Your peace, your focus, your purpose? When something becomes predictable, it becomes ordinary. And when it becomes ordinary, it loses its honor. Let's consider something as simple as rain. In desert places, rain is celebrated. People stop, give thanks, and pay attention. Why? Because it's rare. But in places where it rains every day, people walk through it without thought. They complain about it, they ignore it. The difference isn't in the rain, it's in the rarity. Your presence, like rain, can refresh lives, but only if it's not taken for granted. Paul told Timothy, guard what has been entrusted to you. That means your presence, your voice, your influence. These are entrusted treasures, not to be wasted on environments that do not recognize them. Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake the dust off your feet and move on. That wasn't arrogance, that was self-awareness rooted in divine assignment. He understood that not every environment deserves your residue, let alone your presence. The danger of being everywhere is that you become nowhere with impact. You spread yourself thin, and what should be sacred becomes standard. Have you noticed how celebrities don't attend every event? Royalty doesn't appear in every room. Why? Because their presence must carry weight. If you can be found anywhere, you lose the sense of being significant somewhere. There's a reason why kings are not easily accessed. Their presence carries protocol. You don't just walk into the palace, you are summoned. That structure teaches honor. What protocols have you put around your life? Who has unchecked access to you? If everyone can reach you, then no one will really value reaching you. You are not average. You carry divine DNA. And when you carry something of heaven, you cannot allow the earth to treat it casually. Understand your value before you set your price. If you don't know what you're worth, the world will decide for you, and it will always undervalue what it does not understand. Many people are not being rejected, they are simply being mispriced. When you don't discern the value of what you carry, you will trade it for acceptance, for attention, for approval, and slowly lose the essence of who you truly are. In Genesis 25, Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. A divine inheritance was traded for a temporary appetite. Why? Because he didn't understand its value. And this is the tragedy of ignorance. When you don't know what something is worth, you will exchange it for what feels urgent rather than what is eternal. How many times have you compromised your calling to satisfy a craving? How often have you lowered your standards just to feel seen, needed, or liked? Let's think about it from a marketplace perspective. Imagine someone walks into a store and sees a luxury watch with no price tag. They assume it's cheap, but when the tag is revealed and it costs thousands, their perception changes. The price signals value. And here's the principle. Price is not just about money, it's about perception. When you underprice yourself, you subconsciously tell others how to treat you. Jesus knew his value. When tempted in the wilderness, he didn't bow to the enemy's offer of kingdoms and glory. Why? Because you can't tempt someone with what they already own. He wasn't desperate for validation because he was secure in identity. He heard the Father say, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." That voice anchored him. And if you don't hear that voice, if you don't receive that affirmation, you'll spend your life trying to get it from people who have no authority to give it. Purpose determines price. A paper cup and a crystal glass both carry liquid, but one is disposable and the other is handled with care, not because of what they carry, but because of what they are made of. So ask yourself, are people handling you like paper because you're presenting yourself like you're disposable? Or have you embraced the fact that you were fearfully and wonderfully made? Proverbs 31:10 says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies." That wasn't just a poetic line, it was a declaration of value. And the question is just as relevant today. Who can find someone who knows their worth? Who refuses to settle for exposure at the expense of essence? Who knows that value is not proven by availability, but by authenticity? You must stop negotiating your worth in rooms God never told you to enter. Stop discounting your voice to fit into environments that cannot hold your weight. When you lower your price, you attract those who want deals, not destiny. You are not a bargain, you are a vessel. You carry solutions, wisdom, insight, presence, and that should not be treated casually. Even Jesus asked, "What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?" That's a value statement. You can win in visibility and lose in value if you don't know the true cost of your compromise. And once you give something away cheaply, it's very difficult to reestablish its worth. You must decide today, will you live by purpose or by pressure? Being constantly accessible dilutes your impact. When you are always available, you slowly lose the power of presence. What makes your presence impactful is not how often you show up, but the weight you carry when you do. The more frequent your appearance, the more ordinary you become. And what is ordinary loses its authority. You were not designed to be everywhere, all the time, for everyone. You were created to be in alignment with purpose, in season for impact. Think about salt. A pinch is enough to flavor an entire meal. But if you pour too much, it ruins the taste. Salt is potent because of its proportion, not its volume. Likewise, your presence is most powerful when it is purposeful, not when it is constant. Some of us have poured ourselves into too many places, and now we're wondering why our influence has become diluted. It's not because we lost our gift, it's because we spread it too thin. Jesus never rushed to be seen. In fact, there were times he told people not to tell others what he had done, not because he was hiding, but because he understood something powerful. Timing multiplies impact. When the right moment meets the right presence, transformation happens. But when presence is handled carelessly, it turns into background noise. The same crowd that cried, "Hosanna," cried, "Crucify him," not long after. Because the crowd does not value consistency, it values uniqueness. There is a reason why kings don't answer every call, why CEOs don't respond to every email, and why rare commodities are not displayed in every store. Constant access reduces distinction. And the truth is, some of us are drained not because we're doing too much, but because we've allowed too much of us to be accessed without purpose. Your time is currency. If you spend it carelessly, you'll go bankrupt in energy and in focus. In the book of Luke, when the woman with the issue of blood touched Jesus, he asked, "Who touched me?" The disciples responded, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." In other words, everyone was touching him, but not everyone was drawing power. That woman touched him with intention, and that drew virtue from him. You can be touched 1,000 times, but only intentional touches pull from your purpose. The question is, are you giving your attention to those who are pressing or to those who are pulling on purpose? Moses spent time in the presence of God, and when he came down from the mountain, his face was shining. He didn't speak more, he carried more. His glow said more than his words. That's what happens when you guard your time and remain anchored in the secret place. Your presence alone starts to speak before you do. But when you're constantly on, constantly responding, constantly giving, you lose that shine. And eventually you begin to operate on fumes rather than overflow. You must start asking, is this a purposeful assignment or a draining obligation? Am I being led by the Spirit or pulled by expectation? Accessibility must be governed by clarity. Not everyone deserves to reach you just because they want to. Jesus had boundaries. He left the crowds to be alone. He prioritized rest. He chose solitude over schedule, not because he lacked compassion, but because he understood that power without rest becomes performance. Your gift is not for endless display. It's for divine deployment. So I challenge you today, don't chase to be everywhere. Strive to be effective where it counts. Stop trying to be available to all and start becoming valuable to those who matter. When you understand your worth, you stop entertaining every voice, every invitation, every demand. You walk with clarity, live with purpose, and serve with power. Let your rarity increase your value. Let your silence deepen your presence. Let your absence teach others to honor your return. You were not created to be common. You were born to be exceptional. Set your boundaries, guard your essence, and rise in the authority of who you truly are. Good luck on your journey to becoming valuable, not just visible. May you walk boldly in your assignment and never again settle for being just available. Thank you, and may God bless you richly.